You are Cuphead's villain. Chef Saltbaker may try to sacrifice a soul or two, and the devil may be, well, you know, the devil, but no. Cuphead and Mugman are truly the biggest villains in this entire game. Now, I'm not saying that the Devil and Saltbaker aren't antagonists, as they do eventually try to kill you as the protagonist, but within the lore and to everybody across the Inkwell Isles, you are clearly their biggest threat. Every boss in Cuphead has signed a contract with the devil, relinquishing their soul for whatever they may wish, as we have explored before, and now legally they must give the devil what they have offered up. Of course, this isn't what happens, as the devil doesn't collect the souls himself, and actually builds up all these debts to the point that a whole video game could be built around collecting them, which Cuphead and Mugman are tasked to do as their own payment. But in this meantime, all these debts have built up. It was likely circulated around the bosses that the devil does not collect on his contracts, and thus, it's safe to deal without the consequences. Or the bosses who made this deal simply understood that something like this would never hold up in a court of law. This is a common effect, as if one person does something that technically isn't allowed, but the consequences never come, herd mentality takes over and people will replicate the action while not expecting the consequences. But then Cuphead and Mugman enter the stage, make a bad deal based on a sinful gamble, sin is very real in this world, the devil literally exists, and are now debt collectors, willing to condemn many souls only to save their own. These bosses have now indeed fallen for herd mentality, and rather unfairly must now pay up, even though it seemed like a safe option when they made the deal. Now, it is reasonable to argue that through coercion, the devil forces Cuphead and Mugman to do his bidding, and thus they aren't liable for their future crimes. But evidence suggests that not only are the brothers okay with the situation they're in, they actually love it, and there is plenty of evidence to support this claim. At first they are terrified of the prospect, but still only worry about their own skin. Elder Kettle grants them powers and comes up with a plan for them to take down these bosses. Initially he just believes that this is something that they have to do to survive. But later on, with the fact that they prove to be competent fighters, he adjusts his attitude and is convinced that eventually Cuphead can beat the devil. This does change their objective and morality, as initially they were all in on just getting these contracts. However, now that they have a chance of freeing the bosses, they have even more of an excuse to fight them and gain contracts to get close to the devil. Great for the narrative that they'd want to push, but also great for these sadistic brothers' lust for blood. Now that we have the backstory out of the way, let's get into the nitty-gritty of why Cuphead and Mugman are truly villains. First of all, debt collection is legal, and because we don't know the laws of Cuphead, intimidation and physical violence in order to accomplish this could be legal within the Inkwell Isles. Does that make it morally correct though? Medical insurance companies denying insurance for a cancer patient requiring surgery is legal under certain clauses in the real world. However, most people would consider this evil. In Cuphead's regards, sure, what they're doing could be illegal, but in the real world and in most people's minds, debt collecting via physically assaulting the debtees is considered wrong and unnecessary. The devil does put them up to this, but instead of doing the morally correct thing in accepting that they owe him their souls, they throw every boss under the bus, attack them in their homes, and take their soul contracts by force. And these are the so-called heroes of the story, everybody. At the end of the story, the devil is defeated. Cuphead and Mugman become heroes as they burn all of the soul contracts. Hear me out though. These contracts are legally binding within the supposed legal system of Cuphead. Thus, the devil is technically not doing anything wrong. He can simply claim that the brothers did their own thing and he is not accountable for them having to fight for the contracts. Yet the brothers blame their actions on the devil and attack him when he asks for the contracts that they've collected for him. Not only is this just straight up assault, but it's also vigilantism. It is morally the correct thing to do, as it is saving the very people they had attacked from losing their souls, but there should be a legal process to go after the devil here, rather than attacking him to rip up those contracts. Thus far, I admit the cups have been morally ambiguous, and there has been some righteousness in their horrendous actions. However, the next few pieces of evidence will paint the true colours behind the red and blue, namely the run and gun levels. These levels can be done in a pacifist manner, but I'd argue that is slightly irrelevant to my argument, as only 2% of the player base has actually achieved this. Rather, most players, and every player on their first few runs, commit armed robbery, carelessly running in, blasting a weapon at any minor threat just to collect some coins and pass the stage. These civilians aren't even part of the game's main story, as they don't have soul contracts. They are optional to complete Cuphead, but I can guarantee you that almost everybody will complete these levels to unlock new weapons and charms. This is certifiably an evil act, and the Cup brothers have nobody else to pass the blame onto, as Elder Kettle and the Devil have no part in this slaughter. Elder Kettle is even surprised to see the progress the Cups have made, as he likely expects that they're still only running on a pea shooter, as that's all he gave them, and it would be absurd for them to have bought weapons, since they have no money to their name at the beginning of the game. But no, their crimes pay off, and they get all the gizmos and charms they'd need, with not even a single look back. That's pretty awful, but this isn't the only time the brothers find themselves committing armed robbery, as the entire basis of the DLC rides on this idea. Saltbaker offers to cook them a cookie that will permanently revive their little chalice friend, but in order to do this, he needs the ingredients. Now, how do you get ingredients? Go to the store or offer money to people who have them? No. Force your way into their homes and full-on assault them. The reason is good, but there isn't even room for negotiation. They just do a fun little animation and immediately open fire. All this bloodshed also turns out to be for nothing, as Saltbaker reveals that he's going to use Miss Chalice's soul to make the cookie, which, sure, is bad, but she's dead already, so it's not overly problematic, especially since the fact that the cookie needs a soul to be cooked means Miss Chalice can't be alive again anyway. But they don't accept this and once again choose violence, beating the humble chef up and destroying his home. After this, they manage to spin the story that it was all Saltbaker's fault, and he is forced to do labour to repay for the Cuphead brothers' assault and destruction of property. The most messed up thing in the end of all of this tragedy and blatant villainy is that Cuphead does it with an unwavering smile, only ever showcasing pain and fear for himself. The Cup brothers are masterminds at manipulating the narrative, and Cuphead is simply a game of propaganda. Nobody thinks or cares about the victims, as sure, it ends with them being freed, but the trauma will remain. Let's also not forget that the alternate ending of the game literally shoves the fact that they turn evil into your face. This evil form is only one action away at the end of the game, and pretty much proves that their actions are reprehensible up until then. And that is why you are the villain of Cuphead.